Alright guys, we are almost done with the S23 Ultra comparisons. Today we're going to be doing the 23 versus the S10. And guys, be sure to let me know if I missed a comparison because we will be moving to the S23 and the S23 Plus. Alright, so let's go ahead and break this one down here. The S10, one of my favorite phones because of the size of this phone. It's a mix between the S10 Plus and the S10e. It's very light and comfortable. And that's pretty much the first thing that you will notice here. Just the big size upgrade here, as you guys can see here. The S10, honestly, it kind of feels like one of those dummy phones at the store compared to the S23 Ultra just because of how light it is. This is a pretty big and heavy phone, guys. So just do note, you will notice that right off the bat. Also, you guys could see the difference in design here really stands out with the camera as well. And just to talk about the price, the S10 you can pick up easily, probably for under 200 bucks these days. Without a trade-in, S23 Ultra is like 1200 bucks. And two beautiful phones. I think the S10 still looks really good, but what I like about the S23 Ultra is the matte finish, so you don't get the greasy sort of fingerprints on the S23 Ultra that you get on the S10 here. Like I said, big size difference here, and there is a pretty big hardware difference. So as I said, it's kind of an upgrade and a downgrade. So you do have a headphone jack on the S10, and you don't have a headphone jack on the S23. You also have SD card support on the S10, and you also have a built-in stylus on the S23 Ultra here. I've talked about the stylus a lot. I made a separate video about it. Basically, anybody in a digital artwork or anybody who just wants to navigate their phone with a stylus, or basically I just use it to take notes and color with and stuff like that, just in my free time. But honestly, it's pretty nice to have. But those are like the biggest hardware differences here. They're both still IP68 dust and water resistant as well. And like I said, I think the biggest thing here with the hardware is I do like the matte finish. You obviously have more and bigger cameras, and just as a big size difference here. Alright, so there's definitely a big difference here with the display. So on the S23 we do have a 6.8 inch display. It's dynamic AMOLED, 120 Hz, HDR10 plus, 1750 nits peak brightness. It's a 1440p display, 540 ppi. And you can see it's more of a boxy display as well too, and it has the punch hole in the middle. So on the S10, it also has a 6.1 inch display, dynamic AMOLED, HDR10 plus. There is no 120 Hz or any high refresh rate. It's 1440p, 550 for the PPI. Alright, so basically here you have two, again, different display types. The S10 is definitely way more comfortable in the palm than the more boxier Note 10. But I do like the boxy shape for watching content. It just reminds me more of a TV, I guess. You do have slightly slimmer bezels, as you can see as well, which is really nice. So basically the big difference with with the displays on here is that the S23 Ultra has 120 Hz and it's much brighter display. They're both actually 1440p, so resolution wise and honestly color wise, I'm not seeing too much of a difference here. They actually look pretty identical in terms of the color. So like I said, if you have not tried 120 Hz, go into Best Buy, go into a store, play with the phone with 120 Hz, see if it's worth the upgrade here, because that's like the biggest thing you'll notice right off the bat. And also in direct sunlight, the S23 Ultra looks amazing. And the S10 in direct sunlight, it just doesn't look anywhere near as bright as the S23. So if you're outdoors a lot, you'll really like that upgrade. But just know, you're going from a bigger display, brighter, and 120 Hz. So it just looks and feels a little bit smoother, especially on the eyes. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the specs a little bit more. So the S23 Ultra has the new Snapdragon 8 Gen 2 for Galaxy. It is 256 and 8 gigs of RAM on the base. This one right here is 512 gigabytes and 12 gigs of RAM. And with the S10, you have the Snapdragon 855, which is actually extremely efficient. I know you see these big score gaps, but it's still very efficient for the average daily, user. This one is running Android 12, One UI 4.1, so very important. This phone got its last major OS update with Android 12, and it is currently getting security patches. So just do note that. So you obviously will have a longer life cycle, software life cycle on the S23 Ultra. And not only that, but I think it does get 5 years of security patches, which is very good here. So you will have a pretty long lifespan if you decide to upgrade. Basically, when it comes to speed, guys, like I said, the Snapdragon 855 is still very efficient here. For the average person, unless you're like a gamer or something, you really won't notice too much of a difference here in terms of speed. So that's one thing that I noticed. You're not really missing out on anything. The S10 is still pretty fast for an older phone, honestly. You guys can see. Let's try Subway Surf here. So again, the S23 Ultra is going to feel faster and it is going to load into apps faster, but it's not going to be dramatically faster. It's not going to, like I said, the only thing that'll feel much faster is probably the 120 hertz. Will give it that feeling that it's faster, but overall for like a person that's not gaming and stuff like that, you really won't notice too much of a difference unless you're doing like some heavy stuff, even running a ton of applications on this phone. It really does not lag and stuff, so that's why I say it's pretty impressive as far as the the speed goes. Let's go ahead and open up PUBG here. Now, what's pretty interesting about the gaming performance is that the Snapdragon 855 still does an excellent job. And if you play a lot of games, like I said, you have that SD card support, so you can just load it up with a ton of games, ton of videos and stuff like that. We gotta reload on both actually. But basically, the gaming experience, I think for the casual gamer, is not gonna be too much of a difference because they both actually play at HDR extreme. Where you will see the big difference, honestly, is if you're a more hardcore gamer, then you will sort of see that difference there. In terms of speed. Now, like I was saying, unless you're like a hardcore gamer, you won't notice too much of a difference here. I think one of the biggest differences, like on a game like Fortnite, where you can run it at 90 frames, you'll feel that difference since you have the capability to do that on this phone, since you have a high refresh rate. But like I said, the S10 still does a really good job for the casual gamer. So like I said, you need to be someone who actually does play games a lot to be able to appreciate the extra power. Otherwise, there's not a massive upgrade here with power. It still runs extremely efficient even on the S10 years later. Alright, so let's go ahead and talk about the additional features here. The fingerprint scanner, they both have under the display fingerprint scanners on here. They both are very fast, and also you can use face unlock as well too on both of these phones. Software wise, like I said, besides the stylus support, you pretty much have the same stuff. Samsung desktop support, reverse wireless charging, secure folders, NFC. Basically, they have all the same software features. So you're not really missing out on too much. Again, as you know, with One UI 5.1, you're obviously going to get more features as new versions of Android come out. But all the essentials are pretty much still here. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about the speakers. Let's go ahead and hear the speakers max volume. So while I'm still impressed with the S10 speakers, Samsung did a fantastic job this year with the speakers on this phone. They sound great, very loud. It's much louder than the S10, much better bass, much better clarity. Overall, it's just a pretty nice speaker upgrade for sure here. So really happy about that. Alright, so one of the biggest upgrades, and it depends on if you use the cameras a lot, but one of the biggest upgrades is the cameras. So it's just a massive spec upgrade. You have a 200 megapixel camera on here, a 10 megapixel periscope telephoto that does 10x optical zoom. You can also go all the way up to 100 times zoom on this phone, take pictures of the moon. Very, very cool stuff. And then you also have a 10 megapixel telephoto that does 3x optical zoom, 12 megapixel ultra wide, and it also shoots in 8K 30. You also have a 12 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60. The S10 does have a 12 megapixel standard camera, a 12 megapixel telephoto that does 2x optical zoom, and then what you see here is just digital zoom. So you just have much better zoom on the S23. And then you have a 16 megapixel ultra wide. It shoots in 4K 60, and a 10 megapixel selfie cam that shoots in 4K 60 as well too. So check out these side by side stills and let me know what you guys think. Alright guys, here's just a little test footage of the S23 Ultra here for the video. The 3x, 10x. As you see, just look at the detail. It's really nice. Very impressive. And we do have a 0.6 on here as well too. So just awesome image quality here, man. Alright guys, here's the video on the S10. 0.5. 2x. Alright guys, when it comes to the battery life experience here, you are getting a pretty good upgrade when it comes to battery life. So the S23 Ultra does have a larger 5,000 milliamp battery compared to the about 3,400 milliamp battery in the S10. You do get faster charging at 45 watts versus the 15 watts, and they both do wireless and reverse wireless charging. So basically, you can squeeze around almost 6 hours of screen on time out of the S10, but for a lighter user like myself, I'm able to get around 2 days of battery life with the S23 Ultra, which is extremely impressive. So you definitely are getting a pretty good battery upgrade when it comes to charging speeds and also screen on time. So be sure to let me know what do you guys think, and I will catch you guys in the next one.